Thank you, everyone who's joined us tonight. We are going to review, go back a little bit. We'll to the beginning with our budget. I will share my screen, and then we'll review our budget. But as we begin, let's just open with a prayer. The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Most holy and merciful God, we give you thanks for this day. We give you thanks for the chance to gather again, to review our budget, that which enables us to live out our mission and ministry, to grow the church, form the faithful, and change the world. Be with us as we review. May we be mindful of your gifts that allow this diocese to flourish and to be God's voice for God's people in this world. We ask this through in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Hello. Jen Boyle Tucker.
Hi,
May
Jen.
I make you the host so you can admit people?
Absolutely. Good evening.
There you go.
Amen.
We've already sung your praises like
Oh,
to the
stop.
back.
I'm embarrassed.
Tonight, we're going to review our budget again. Before I share the screen, just for those of you who weren't able to join us last night, we began this budget process in June, a little later than normal because of the pandemic. We wanted to get a sense of any changes in our revenues and expenses due to the pandemic and use those numbers to help us guide our budgeting for 2021. For 2021, we budgeted as if event activities would happen in person, things like Camp Chicago, convention. We've budgeted for general convention. You'll see that when we review the expenses. We've only budgeted for half a year of the Nicholas, knowing that we did not expect to be able to reopen the Nicholas Center until halfway through. We also knew, and we worked with diocesan leaders from B&T Standing Committee, Diocesan Council, trustees of the endowment, to review again our over-reliance on use of the bishop's funds. And when Keith reviews the revenue, he'll point that out. But we have, over the course of the last 6 years, have been using those funds to essentially balance our budget and using the principle of that. And we calculate over the course of time how many years we have left to do that. I think all of you know that this year the bishop and trustees made the decision to explore the potential sale of 65 East Huron, what Bishop Lee calls the endowment, the large endowment that our diocese has never had. And the funds from that sale, the hope is, depending on lots of factors as the trustees still work with the broker to make decisions and to see what the opportunities are, to build an endowment that will contribute to what we already have in terms of endowment, but also help further the mission and ministry of the diocese. Will free up funds that we have been spending on a building that is aging with an older boiler and chiller windows that are not thermosealed. So we're to operating expenses to help take care of the cathedral, who would remain on the in their building, and they're discerning what they need as well from the future sale. But the sale would be to help ensure the future of the diocese, as well as to contribute to affordable housing in and around our diocese, to an organization doing that, not us to begin investing in affordable housing. So if there's more questions about that at the end, I know Lon Myers, Mike Matson could certainly answer some of that. So those are sort of principles. We knew that going into our budget. Oh, Jen, will you allow me to share? Thanks. And the staff took great care in viewing their expenses for the year and in budgeting for next year. There we go. So here's our budget. Here it comes. Can everyone see the budget? Great.
Yes, we're on the first page.
We're on the first page. Let me scroll to the third page.
Yes.
And I will, there, make it bigger. There we go. All right. Keith, I'll let you take a gander at our budget.
So we'll talk about pledges. First item on the budget, the revenue contribution budget. We had budgeted 2.3 million this year. We're expecting to come in expecting the budget to come in between 2 million and 2,050,000. And so that laid the groundwork for projecting the budget for 2021 at 1,950,000. And I think that that's an unachievable goal. We'll be sending out Common Mission Share Pledge letters in December, and we won't know. We'll continue to talk with churches about what their pledge might be, and we'll close the pledge campaign off at the end of March. At that time, traditionally we've had about $20,000 to $30,000 of pledges that were not able to be met. So that's the 1,950,000. The next item on the budget is the Bishop Fund contributions. That was the number that we needed to balance this budget. And that 1,160,000 will drain our reserve funds and the Bishop funds to zero in somewhere between 2024 and 2025 at that, if we continue to draw down the Bishop funds at that rate. Going further down, contributions from the endowment fund, that went up because Bishop Lee got some contributions for the fund to support the episcopacy, and that's helped to boost the budget for the gifts from the endowment fund to the diocese. Going further down the page, miscellaneous income is 276,000, and 270,000 of that relates to a gift that the diocese received in 2018. It was tied up in probate, and it was tied up in, now it's tied up in litigation. We're hoping that will be freed up in 2021, and that we would receive our first gift over 10-year period. That would continue over 10 years of $270,000. And so those are the major. The last item is the Nicholas Center revenue, as Courtney mentioned. That's half a year of the projected revenue. We were in the past getting additional gifts from the Nicholas endowments to support the center, but that has stopped. So that 52,000 represents fees that would be realized during the second half of next year. Are there any questions about the 2021 budget?
Keith, Jim, are you taking from the Bishop's Fund 1,160,000 for this year? Am I reading that correctly?
Yeah.
That'd be 2021.
Right.
Will be 1,160,000 this year. We could be quite close to that $910,000 budget for 2020, if that's your question.
Well, my question
we're
is, did we increase that just because we lowered what we think will be the pledges?
That was the amount that was needed to balance this budget, Jim.
So if
it's really the
1,900,000 reduce what you take from the Bishop's Fund then?
So what the income from that is right now, about $180,000 is the income. So the amount in excess, which is almost $1 million, is taking it out of the corpus. So
No, what I'm saying is if the pledges come in higher than 1,950,000, you would take less from the Bishop's Fund then, I assume.
Oh, yes. So
Mhm.
that's what we are doing this year. We will hold off on pulling any money out of the Bishop funds as long as we can. We only take money out of the Bishop funds when we're at the point where we believe that we need it. So we're looking at that right now. We're about 700 and some thousand gifts from the Bishop funds this year. We're not going to take any more out unless we need to this year. We'll do the same thing next year. That's kind of the last, that's the last place. And when you
Yeah.
see the revenue go, these revenue numbers, most of these income numbers on the other side of this are expenses. And so the kind of the way this works is, for example, for the convention, this is about half of the revenue or the expenses of the convention. So that 56,000. So that's kind of the math on many of these line items where we charge for things. And then it's interesting, I'm getting in the weeds here, but it's interesting by when that projected $56,000 next year comes in, it only covers half of the expenses, but the math is the following year we have to give 15% of that to the national church. So ironically, the more we charge, the more we have to pay and the less we cover our expenses. So, but anyway, this is the math this year or next year.
Keith, it's Lon.
Yes.
Do you want to comment? Could you comment on the contribution from St. James Cathedral? It shows a change of a negative 51,000. Have they taken over
Yes.
some other responsibilities?
Courtney can talk to that.
Yeah.
Yes, but yes, that's it. They're taking over the payment of
Right.
Sexton.
So that is when they took over the cost for maybe 1.5 FTE of sextons. They reduced the amount that they make towards their contribution towards the operation of St. James Commons. As you can imagine, because we're covering, when we look at the Commons budget, we are covering for both the entire complex, which is the office building and the cathedral. We are covering the maintenance and repair of all of the operating systems, the electricity, the fuel cost, all of those things. So this is the diocesan sort of gift back to the cathedral is fairly significant, and that we pay for their operating costs. And part of our conversation as the trustees and a group of the trustees and members of the cathedral chapter meeting to talk about the potential sale of 65 East Huron are digging a little bit more deeply into some of this reality that's been the case for many, many years.
Thank you.
So going down the page from the 4 million, we've got pass-through, which those are monies that come to the diocese and then they get passed to Sudan and Southeast Mexico. And then finally, other support, we have 505,000. 200 of that is B&T's, Bishop and Trustees support for congregations. They're building repairs, and the other 300,000 is for operating grants to mission and other for congregations. And then you see Clergy Relief Society. That number is up in 2019 because there was a gift from the just like that, the medical home, not the medical home.
So Montgomery, oh.
Yes, yes.
Church home, yes.
Church home, and they gave us, and they gave us $50,000 in 2019, and this isn't shown here, but we just had a call this afternoon, and it's sounding like they're going to be able to give our, we have, there are 16 clergy that retired needy clergy that are supported, and it looks like we'll be able to send additional monies out around Christmas time this year from the church home. So that isn't
Great.
shown here though.
Yeah. We get these amazing thank you letters due to this gift that they keep anonymous from the recipients, and it's a wonderful, wonderful program that we're able to offer to retired clergy or their surviving spouses living at or below 300% of poverty, living on very, very low incomes.
Courtney, this is
Yes,
Jim. What it actually is the church fund? Where does that money come from?
The Clergy Relief Society is its own entity. It's been around since the late 1800s. It has, before the church pension group, retired clergy were funded mostly, I believe, by purses and savings that retired clergy had realized. And then with the church pension group, the group of clergy that have been supported by the Clergy Relief Society, and it's a couple of $1 million of endowment. I'll call it endowment. It isn't an endowment, but and that is through gifts from the late 1800s to today, and that's supplemented, as I mentioned, by the church home, and with $50,000 last year, and it sounds like there's going to be $50,000 again this year. This is their income from those investments, and right now, the main people being supported are becoming more deacon or non-paid clergy. So we still have some clergy that retired or before and didn't really have a church pension fund investment, but now it's starting to move more towards deacons, and that was the latest addition that came in last year. It's a well received and well needed. There are 14, let me get this right. There were 14 there were 12 that get $20,000 a year or less. And of those 12, 4 of them have income of less than $10,000 a year. And there were another 4 that had income of less than $30,000 a year.
Any other questions on revenue?
Keith, does that, or Courtney, does that eventually go away then once these people are no longer around because of the pension fund that we now have for all the active?
So what's happening is it's transitioning to non-paid, like deacons who for whatever their circumstances were, did not have a secular retirement program, or didn't working in the secular sector of the economy, didn't have any income from the churches. So it's starting to it's been migrating that way. So there's a real, as you can hear from the numbers, there's a real need for supporting these people. And like Courtney mentioned, the letters that we get in are really, they allow them to get some glasses, some dental work that they've been deferring, and it goes on and on, meeting some very basic needs.
Great. Thanks, Keith. All right, let's look at revenue. We'll start with the episcopacy. This is the expenses that fund the office of the bishop. The compensation includes the bishop and the bishop's executive assistant. we are budgeting for 12 months of a bishop. We weren't sure when we completed the budget in June exactly when a new bishop would be starting, although we anticipate that our newly elected bishop won't start until the late winter, early spring. So we'll likely save money in this compensation line. It's also higher than 2020 budget because we did budget compensation for what I might say is a remote possibility. But if the newly elected bishop were not able, or the home that the bishop and trustees own for the bishop was not suitable for the new bishop's family or particular situation, we have put in this compensation budget the cash stipend plus housing allowance, cash housing allowance. So that, again, the bishop and trustees own a home that the bishop has been, Bishop Lee recently moved out of, and that is likely where the new bishop will live, but we have budgeted for the possibility that that won't happen.
If the new bishop doesn't live in that home, what are our plans for it then?
I'll let Lon answer that.
I'll defer that one to Michael because he's a
Yeah.
liaison to it.
Oh, Michael's the
I
liaison, right?
am, yes. Well, our plan would be to sell it if the bishop doesn't want it. So we see no reason to keep a empty house around.
It's in the Edgewater neighborhood. It's a
Yeah.
lovely, lovely
Oh, it's a great
home.
house. Yeah,
Very
great
new
location.
and
Yep.
yeah. So there we go. Other items, our pledge to the wider church, we pledge the full 15% assessment. It's not really a pledge. It's down because the money on which they calculate it 2 years back was lower. Basically our line report we send to the wider church. That continues. I think that is going to be, especially as churches and dioceses struggle through the pandemic and as we come out the other side, I do believe that looking at that pledge and how it looks at that pledge is going to be an important part of DOUG. The Lambda conference has been postponed. We're not sure when it will happen. We have also budgeted this year, we're anticipating for 2021 about $77,000 in bishop, mainly transition expenses, also with the consecration. We're quite sure when that will be, but those are funds that are, we've budgeted each of the last 3 years, the bishops and transition. Any questions on the episcopacy? You'll see it's just a switch over last year. Great. We'll look at
Jim, on the
Yeah.
episcopy, whatever we don't pay the bishop, where does that money go then?
it. Will just any savings will result in us taking less out of bishop's funds as long as other sources of income stay the same. And we will likely see savings this year. And you look at, for example, even just looking at ministries, I'll come back to compensation, but travel, meetings, and other expenses, we did not budget, and it is likely that we won't be doing a lot of in-person training and meetings for, I don't know, the first 3 months of the new year, if not longer. So just as we've had this year, we will see savings probably throughout our budget, depending, again, the pandemic and seeing all of those things. So looking at the compensation budget or ministries, the increase, we did all staff are receiving 1% raise, and our insurance costs for health insurance went up about 7%. We continue to have increased health insurance costs every year. We are also budgeting for 8 months of a full-time associate for ministries. Last year, we had a part-time person because Ellen Ekevag could only work half-time. She came in after Victor Conrado came or left for New York. And we were in the middle of a bishop search. So Andrea Meisen, our director of ministry, really wanted to wait until a new bishop was in place so that that could be someone they agreed on together. And so, again, we've budgeted for 8 months of a full-time associate for ministries. It really helps oversee our Fresh Start program and many of our transitions. We generally have anywhere from 18 to 22 congregations in transition. And Andrea has been carrying the bulk of that over the course of this year. The Chicago expenses are lower because we have a credit with them. We had a deposit for 2020. A part of that deposit we granted to them, sort of paid a cancellation fee. But the other portion of it, they carried over for 2021. And we certainly hope that we're able to have Chicago this summer. We will likely not know for quite a while though. Other expenses are mainly the same. Commission on Ministry is lower because some of the discernment retreats for nominees will not start up again until the new bishop is consecrated and settled into their role. So just anticipating fewer of those in 2021. Any questions on ministry's budget?
What is
Courtney,
Fresh Start?
Go ahead.
Fresh Start is a program for newly ordained clergy or clergy new to a call. And it is a program of mentoring, coaching, and small group and large group gatherings that happens throughout the year. And clergy participate in it for 2 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a great program and artfully expanded over the last couple of years. And it's a huge support to folks new to the diocese and to newly ordained.
Courtney,
Yes.
on here. Question, what's been the effect in 2020 on the budget line item for campus ministry diocesan program? And do you envision that holding level with the changes that are occurring both in education and in the ministry program, that program itself?
That's a great question. We have maintained our granting to campus ministries. They have kept their same staffing. We support campus ministries. For those of you who aren't aware, at Northwestern, at University of Chicago, Northern Illinois University, the campuses in the Loop, Columbia, Roosevelt, that sort of DePaul, that quadrant there, and some campus ministry, a very small grant at Macomb at Eastern or Western Illinois University. I think that is going to be one of those conversations that our new bishop and Chad Sanuda, our associate for youth and campus ministry and campus minister at Northwestern, are going to really dig into because of the changing nature of higher ed and residence and all of that. And I think it's going to be an opportunity to have some really fruitful conversation about what that ministry will look like. So I think for now, probably this year and perhaps into the next, we'll maintain steady, but could certainly shift. And our model of providing campus ministry might shift as we explore what the future looks like. Great question. Anything else? All right, let me go, I think, to the next line. Networking is our area that handles all of our communications, our community engagement, and our fundraising. In the compensation and benefits line, there's not much change, but it is anticipating, because they did not spend this amount in 2020. We held off on hiring someone. We have budgeted for, again, 8 months, waiting for a new bishop to come on board, of a full-time associate for development who would work with the team, with Crystal Plummer, Jen Boyle Tucker, around fundraising, Bishop's Appeal, and also looking at those larger gifts. It's a position we haven't had funded, or we haven't filled since Shay Craig left 2018. And so there's a real desire to fill that so that we can have really beef up again our fundraising efforts. We've done great with our Bishop's Appeal, even during this pandemic time, and having someone full-time on board who can really focus on that will be just a great asset. Everything else is primarily the same. All of the commissions, committees, and task forces, so Anti-Racism Commission, Peace and Justice Committee, their budgets all fall in the networking line, those community engagement There's a bit more for convenings, the $4,000, and some additional funds for communications, anticipating that with a new bishop, the need to have the new bishop out and about and engaged, we'll want to convene more when we're able to get together, or even to convene with some virtual ways, making sure that we're paying attention to that. Any questions on networking? And as you can see in all of the budget lines, increases in those overall lines are very small. Operations is a catch-all sort of for everything. It covers all of the staff in finance, human resources, building operations, reception, and maintenance. It is down this year because of savings realized from a shift in our staffing. So currently, last year in 2019, we had covering a full-time maintenance supervisor and 2 full-time sextons plus 1 full-time maintenance staff member for the Nicholas Center. In 2020, we had some adjustments, and in 2021, we are recognizing that further. We share right now the cost of the maintenance supervisor with the cathedral. So that is one, the cathedral does pay for half of the comp and benefits for Henry Leach. And so we don't, you see that's in the compensation budget. We don't see that in their gift to the diocese. And outsourced our cleaning. So we have been able to shift the expenses of the building maintenance that were really driven by the cathedral priest use of the building to their budget, so that ours is a more accurate reflection of the staffing that we need. Still a lot, because we do cover a full-time receptionist as well as full-time or half maintenance supervisor because of we're the owners of the building. Archives are covered in this budget. Computer expenses, it's anticipating the need to upgrade to really look at our use around cloud-based resources. We have budgeted for, as if we will be back to West in November, and we'll see what happens, how our year transpires. The General Convention falls in this area. The General Convention office will be announcing perhaps in the next few days whether they'll be holding General Convention in 2021 or 2022. It's likely it'll be pushed to 2022, and those expenses would just move to the next year, and we'd realize those savings this year. The Nicholas Center expenses just reflect 6 months of Nicholas Center operation.
Courtney?
Yeah.
I think the diocesan convention went down because they are using our deposit.
Yes, so we did a 50-50 split with them. 50% was a cancellation fee and 50% went to our 2021. Thank you. We had a $30,000 deposit with them for 2020. Thanks for noting that, Keith. So those are our expenses. One expense that does get recorded in this line is our legal expenses. And those, we are currently engaged in litigation. It's a sexual abuse case against a former priest of the diocese who's now deceased from the late 1950s, at a time in which our diocese and none of the other dioceses named in the lawsuit had liability insurance. So church insurance is not covering the costs of our legal representation. We did not budget for those, but they are averaging anywhere from $100,000 to $200,000 over the last year and a half.
Courtney, if you could move the page up just a little bit.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, that's the 258,767.
Oh, there it is.
There it is, yeah. That was mostly, you can see what the budget is for payroll, audit, and is 13,000, and you can see the difference is the legal fees that Courtney's talking about.
Yeah. And it's a complicated case because it's filed in New York under the rollback of the statute of limitations. And so we are arguing for dismissal based on jurisdiction because we do not want to be the diocese that sets a precedent for being sued in dioceses other than our own. We're well represented by an attorney in Lon Meyer's former firm, who is based in New York and is serving us well and is discounting her rates to us very much, but it is not an inexpensive endeavor. And we have to have an attorney licensed in New York.
So the actual suit is in New York?
Yes, so it was filed in Manhattan, and it's filed against us, the Diocese of New York and the Diocese of Western New York. The claimant lives in New York. It is a priest who came from Western New York to Chicago and then went to New York. And so that's, and there is abuse alleged when he was here in Chicago by the complainant as well as in New York. So it's a super complicated case. I've learned far more legal stuff than I ever thought I would. And our first motion to dismiss, the judge let the complainant's attorney, I thought, do refile an amended complaint that like alleged new things. So it's more costly and more complicated than it needs to be. So we should hopefully file our new motion to dismiss in December. And the legal system, the wheels of justice are turning even more slowly because of the pandemic, because oral arguments are being heard on Zoom and courts were closed down for a while. So it is very, very slow. We have other litigation, but that is all currently being handled by church insurance. The last budget line is St. James Commons. These are our building, sort of the fixed expenses, things that that happen, whether we're in the building or out of the building. You see a lower cost of electricity. We have a new electricity contract where we're saving. We're part of a joint community purchasing group that a number of our churches participated in, and other groups from around Illinois. Our fuel costs are maintaining is our hope. Garbage and disposal that increase is really because of increased ministry by the cathedral, and so that has generates a lot of trash. We're hoping that through lots of money spent on our HVAC this year, not just the maintenance contract, but extra repairs that needed to happen. We're hoping that won't happen as much in 2021. Particularly, we haven't been using the systems as much. Tom might disagree with me, he was called. And our maintenance, repairs, and supplies budget, we have increased, and that's really based on experience. We have found that when various systems go out that may have been placed in the renovations from a few years ago, the cost to replace them is often more. Often it is associated with some kind of computer monitoring system, and those need to be upgraded. So we are, continuing to make sure we're budgeting enough for that. And then lastly, we have hired a janitorial service to do a lot of our cleaning. They were cleaning 5 days a week while we were open because of COVID. The building doesn't normally need to be cleaned 5 days a week, but we've budgeted for 2021, 5 days a week cleaning, and we'll see what that looks like. And we return to the building. We're not quite sure when that will be either. So at the end of the day, our total expenses for the diocese, not worrying about the 924 is the pass through. And so those are matched by the same revenue, but our expenses are $4,042,224. Any questions before I close the screen? Anything else people want to see?
Courtney, Jim, have we made a calculation between what we budgeted versus what 2020 actually is costing us because of the pandemic?
Wait, can you ask your question again? Crystal did let me know.
We calculated the difference between what our actual expenses are for 2020 versus what we had forecasted up to be because of the pandemic or as a result of the pandemic?
We did some reforecasting in the summer before we started budgeting, and then as we do financials every year, and take a look at that and use those to evaluate as we were budgeting for 2021 as well.
So the difference is when you look at Bishop funds draw so far this year, we've drawn a bit more than $700,000. So the difference between that and what we had budgeted, the 900,000, is telling us that will be overall will be about $200,000 under the expense budget.
Yeah.
So that's
also,
our guess right now.
Yeah.
Keith, how does the PPP loan figure into that number though?
I was just going to mention that. The PPP loan?
Good point. The PPP loan, I think the PPP loan is going to come, it's looking right now like the PPP loan is going to have to be moved back out of revenue into payable, a loan payable. We still haven't gotten the okay from Chase to file our request for loan forgiveness, even though I've heard from a church that they got their loan forgiveness. So I was hoping that we could file our loan forgiveness request and have it approved by now, but as every day goes by, that's beginning to look more and more remote. So
We had ours, we filed for our loan forgiveness at All Saints, and it looks likely that it's going to go through. So
yeah, if you didn't get your loan through Chase, you were
Which we
given the
didn't.
green light.
yeah,
Chase keeps saying that be patient. They're going to allow us to go in the order in which we received our loan. I'm not believing any of that.
good.
So anyway, it's quite, I find it quite frustrating because I will guarantee you, we are ready to go. All the documentation they require, etc.
Yeah.
But because of the cash flow, we still wouldn't draw money out of Bishop funds to cover that, what would appear to be a book loss on because we've got the cash flow. You know what I'm saying, Lon? We would go into the end of the year with a net loss. Because we're not going to, as was questioned earlier, when would you pull money out of Bishop funds? That's really the last place we're looking to pull any extra money out of. So I'm hoping we don't have to do that by the end of the year, although Courtney reminded me that given it's a long, I guess the way I would describe it is Bishop Lee is sole corp for Bishop funds until the new bishop is consecrated. That's my understanding, but we're trying to get clarification of that, because if he is no longer sole corp when he resigns, then we've got an interim in there where we really technically can't pull money out of Bishop funds. so we'll be looking at that cash flow pretty carefully between now and the end of the year.
Yeah.
It's a little more in the weeds than I thought we'd get, but there it is.
Keith, do you know what the at hand? Do you know what the potential liability is of that PPE loan?
I would say for us, for the diocese and ECCS got a loan too for $50,000.
Okay.
Ours was between 340 and 350,000, and I am very certain that it will be 100% forgiven.
Yeah.
I filled all the forms out, got all the backup. We don't even have to claim utilities and all that stuff. We just have it straight out with our compensation.
Did you extend it? Do the extended period?
Yeah, because
Yep.
the way it worked out is that the math that they required on the original filing would have made it, most of it for the diocese would have been forgiven, but not all.
Mhm.
ECCS, not, it would have been dicey as to whether ECCS would have realized of forgiveness, because they've got some various hurdles that you have to, that they would have to clear, and I don't think they would have been able to do it, so.
Wow.
But for
Okay.
both of us, we will receive forgiveness, I can tell you that. I'm 100% certain.
Yep.
Yeah. Keith worked hard on those, and
Yeah.
I think waiting for Chase. Any other questions on the budget? Excellent. Jane Clark and I will be presenting the budget to be received by our convention. Jane, I know I owe you an email tonight to get to practice for that. And all of the budget information is already posted on the website. This budget hearing will be posted as well once we receive that. And you can always call Keith or me if you have questions about the budget. Our goal over the last, I mean, I've been here 9 years. Keith has been here 15, 14. I guess I've been here 8 years.
2007.
Well, it's been to continue to always increase transparency about how we bring money in and how we spend money. And so part of that for me is making sure that as many people as possible have a chance to look at the budget, ask questions about the budget, and know that we're always available to answer questions about how we use the funds that are gifted to us by the congregations of the diocese, which make up a significant, little over 50% of our budget. And so I believe we are accountable to our congregations and to our governing bodies, like our trustees of the endowment, bishops' funds, bishop and trustees who help support the budget, so that everyone knows that we are being good stewards of the resources that we have.
And I think, Courtney, I'm just going to add something here. I think it might be important to really realize or let people know that this is an ongoing process, that particularly this year with all the changes and not only COVID, but new bishop and everything else, that this is something that people are looking at. You've already referred to several times things have been looked at since the budget was approved in June, and when you were making the budget and all those different timelines, that there is going to have to be adjustments as we go.
Yeah. So much of next year, it was so with the budget, because we're writing a budget with absolutely no idea of what 2021 is going to look like. I mean, there's always uncertainty, but there's heightened uncertainty around, will there be economic downturn because of the ongoing impacts of the pandemic? Will we ever get to gather again in person in 2021, or what will that look like? What will the timeline be? Yeah. And so it was a weird budgeting time.
Mhm.
And all of our bishop candidates are aware of, and they've conversations with Bishop Lee about the budget, with Keith about the budget when they first gathered several months ago, and see this as an opportunity to really give thought to what is it going to mean to be diocese in the years ahead. And I have to say that the eyes of the rest of the church are really looking at us because they feel like we might have something to say about that, and a way to really lead into a future that will be very different.
Who controls the decision about selling 65 East Huron? Is that the board of trustees, or is that the bishop, or how's that finally determined, or has it already been determined?
No, it's bishop and trustees who makes the determination, makes the decision to sell it.
And the new bishop has no input in that?
Well,
New bishop, the new bishop is head of
Yes.
BT.
Right.
They're the,
That's what I
yeah,
thought.
right. But
So nothing can
It's
be
the
done until the
bishop
new
and
bishop is in
trustees.
place. So you're not doing anything until the new bishop is in place,
Yeah.
and then having that discussion.
Well, the decision has been made, unless something dramatic occurs, that the property will be put on the market.
right,
Whether the market responds with a offer that is acceptable, that would be subject to, that would, and would be accepted by the trustees, is open.
Mhm.
And the
Yeah.
bishop, the new bishop would have some input into that then?
Yes, absolutely.
Mhm.
I mean, Bishop Lee announced for B&T that we had decided to put the property on the market. As president of B&T, the new bishop will definitely be involved.
When do you expect the property to go on the market? After the new year or before then?
No, after the new year,
after the first of the
probably.
year.
Yep.
Probably sometime on a quiet marketing basis in January, and then a more public marketing later in the first quarter.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for your time tonight and participation. Look forward to seeing you Saturday at convention. If you are a delegate, please make sure to sign on early so we can count towards the quorum. If you are a delegate, you should have received an email today from sort of 5 things to get ready for convention, which came from the diocese. You've received an email from John Casey of VPOL. And if you have already submitted clicked on the registration form, which was in email, you'll receive an email, Karen Gutierrez. So just check your emails all the time, the next few days, and only read them from us.
That's right.
They're the most
Okay.
important until Saturday when we are done.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank
Be
you.
well, safe, and talk
Thank you
soon.
much.
You too. Okay.
Appreciate it.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.